Taking photos of moving subjects can be tricky, but as long as you follow some basic guidelines, there's no reason why you can't absolutely nail the shot. And that's what this week's video is all about. Welcome to the Photo Genius channel. Hi, Paul here from Photo Genius. Welcome to my channel where I post regular photography tutorials, all designed to help you get more from your digital camera so you can take better photos. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. This week's video is kindly sponsored by Squarespace. So if you need a domain, website, or want to grow your business online, check out squarespace.com/photogenius. Now this is the second video in what may well become a regular feature on this channel. Behind the image is an opportunity for me to share with you guys not just the camera settings, but also the decisions that I made when taking a particular image or images. Last week we looked at a portrait shot and also a landscape that featured light trails. This week we're looking at something very different, a moving subject. This image of an army helicopter I captured on the last day of the Brisbane Festival, an annual celebration of all things Brisbane that concludes with an aerial display, flyover and a firework display. I was using my Nikon ZFC and a 50 to 250mm telephoto lens, but this image could easily have been taken with any DSLR or mirrorless camera. Now, of course, I appreciate that you may not have any particular interest in photographing helicopters or maybe planes, but I really hope you're going to stick around and enjoy the video because the techniques and the tips that I'm going to share with you can be applied to many different types of moving subject. When I'm taking a picture, there's more to it than simply pointing the camera and pressing the button. In my head, I have an idea and a vision of how I want the image to turn out. And that, of course, is my goal. Now, my intention is to then set the camera up so I can achieve that goal. As with most images, my goal was for the subject to be in focus and well exposed, but also I wanted the image to emphasize motion and movement. This is the creative side of photography that you often can't achieve when shooting auto. The helicopter is sharp and in focus. There's lots of detail there. You can see a guy hanging out of the side door. You can even see the pilot. Yet the background is clearly blurry. Now that is my intention because this is not a static subject, it's moving. So I want the image to show movement and motion. This image uses the panning technique, and it's called that simply because I'm panning the camera with the subject and as the subject moves. It's very popular with sports photographers. Now remember, the goal is to get the subject sharp or acceptably sharp. So you've got to make sure that if this is the subject, you're panning at the same pace and speed as the subject. But of course, we want the background to blur. Now the way we achieve that is to use a shutter speed that's a bit slower than we would normally use when hand holding the camera. And of course, if you then move the camera backwards and forwards as you take the picture, the background will blur. Now the quicker the subject moves, the faster the pan, the more background blur you will get. Now I've gone into more detail about this technique in a separate video that I'll link up here. Check it out if you want to learn more. Next up, I want to talk about camera settings, but before I do, just a very quick word about our video sponsor, Squarespace, the all-in-one website building platform that you can use to showcase your business or brand online. I'm using Squarespace myself to design a new website. In no time at all, using their drag and drop system, I was able to build a landing page without the need to understand any coding or web design. Just like me, you can create a gallery to showcase your photography or set up an online store to sell images and prints. Plus, Squarespace make it really easy to fully customize the layout, colors and design to suit your individual style or brand and truly make it your own. To check it out for yourself, go to squarespace.com/photogenius for a free trial and use the offer code PHOTOGENIUS to save 10% off your first purchase. Many thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video and supporting the Photo Genius channel. Okay, let's get into the camera settings, and a good place to begin is focusing. To ensure your subject is in focus, there are two things you need to consider: focus points and the focus mode. Let's take a look at the focus points first. Now the number of focus points will vary camera to camera, but ideally what you want to do is select the focus point that falls on your subject. For this image I selected the center focus point, and that's what I'd recommend for taking photos of moving subjects and tracking subjects. Here I'm selecting the center focus point on my Nikon ZFC. This is a Nikon D3500 DSLR camera. And as you can see, a similar process on this Canon DSLR. So now the camera knows what to focus on, the next step is to choose which focus mode to use. Typically most cameras will have two autofocus modes, one for non-moving subjects and one designed with moving subjects in mind. If you're using a Canon camera, this will be one shot or AI servo. Nikon, Sony and other makes use a different term, AFS, which is autofocus single, or AFC for autofocus continuous. Now as the helicopter is moving, for this shot I set the Nikon ZFC to AFC focus, which is autofocus continuous. Now to learn more about how to get the most from your camera's focusing modes, check out my video Focus Like a Pro, link below this video. Having a basic understanding of how to control your camera's focus points, as well as knowing which focus mode to use based on whether your subject is moving or not moving, is incredibly important. I have made separate videos on those subjects. If you want to delve in a bit deeper, you'll find links in the description below this video. Okay, next up, let's talk shutter speed. Now when it comes to shutter speeds, there are a lot to choose from. A fast shutter speed will freeze the movement and make everything really sharp, and too slow a shutter speed will make everything blurry. The trick was to find a shutter speed that would give me a detailed shot of the helicopter but still show blur in the rotor blades and some blur in the background. And after a bit of testing, I found that 1/100th of a second was the perfect shutter speed. So with the shutter speed set, next up was aperture. Now I was using an aperture of f6.3. This was the largest aperture the lens would allow, and that's because I was using a telephoto lens to zoom in and get me closer to the subject. So having set the camera's shutter speed and the aperture, the next step was to check the camera's light meter, which was showing a very slight underexposure. Now this image was shot a bit later in the day, so I needed to find a way to get a bit more light into the camera. Now there are three ways of controlling light: shutter speed, aperture and ISO. So to fix that very slight underexposure, I simply raised my ISO from the default of 200 up to 400, and that did the trick. Now a quick word about composition. When photographing a moving subject, we don't always have the same level of control over the composition as we would when photographing, say, a static subject like a landscape or maybe a building. So my tip is to place your subject in the center of the frame and allow enough space around the subject so you can always crop in post later to get the composition that you want. Now, I'm certainly no aviation photographer, but I think on the day I did a reasonable job of getting this image. Sometimes with this type of thing, there's an element of luck, and it's about being in the right place at the right time. But regardless of what I'm photographing, for me, it's always about having an intent and goal, because that dictates what camera settings I'm going to use. Now I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'd love to know your thoughts, so please consider posting a comment down below, because as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, behind the image may well become a regular feature on this channel. Now if you missed episode number 1, I take you behind the scenes of shooting these two images, and I think that's definitely worth checking out. If you did enjoy the video, then please consider giving it a thumbs up, because it helps the videos get noticed. That helps my channel grow. If you don't want to miss out on future videos, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. All that's left to do is for me to say thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you again sometime soon. See ya. Bye.